Apple like Dark Crystal? Uh, we watched it a couple years back, and I had heard a lot about it, and it's a big Jim Henson production. I think it was his like first non-Muppets movie. So it was a big deal to him. And I'd just seen some like Jim Henson retrospective. So I was like, well, I'm going to watch this thing. I haven't ever seen this thing before, or The Labyrinth for that matter. And uh, it's like really world buildy. It feels really world buildy. It's like, here's this thing, and here's how these people work, and these people work. And man, I world building is like hit or miss with me, right? Like I really got to be interested in like a conflict or relationship between characters. It doesn't have to be like, oh, I like you, I like you. It's like no, like the relationship between like the villain and the protagonist, or the protagonist and somebody else. Like something has to drive my interest, whether it's like action or a conflict or relationships or storyline or something like that. And I know all of these things exist in this movie in some fashion or another, but if they're there, they're like hard for me to grasp or care about, or they're in the background compared to like what feels like a lot of self-indulgent stuff, a lot of self-indulgent like what feels like 5 minute scenes between the Skeksis bad guys and them doing things and talking about stuff, and it just feels like the focus is on the Skeksis to the point of like you just want to like take the director and the producers by the shoulders and be like, they're the bad guys. You don't need to focus on them for this amount of time. Like, why are we still here listening to this silly bird people do silly bird people things? Like, it's too much. I read that at one point in time they even wanted them to not speak English, so you would have to like read subtitles, and for one thing that seems counterintuitive. Like I do subtitle stuff, right? Like there's a time and a place for it, like especially when the kid is asleep and I can't have the volume too loud, like, and I'm okay with reading it, like I will definitely have that so I could hear what's going on. But in a movie where like the draw is the visual stuff and the special effects, like the puppetry and everything else, wouldn't you want your audience to see the silly bird people do the stuff instead of having to read what the silly bird people are saying? Like that doesn't make any sense. And two, like, oh man, I can't imagine those scenes with any more like silly bird noises. Like the Skeksis were too much. This movie in general felt like an impressive technical display with like kind of a bland, not super well done or thought about story tacked onto it. It honestly feels like what people give Star Wars movies shit for, of being impressive technical showcases and being either light or um, pretty standard on what the story is. That's what it felt like to me. After watching this, I couldn't imagine that they were making a sequel series based on this material. Like, I found it very surprising that people had enough nostalgia for this thing that they wanted to make their own Netflix series about it. And I think since that in that time they've done the series, and it's canceled now at this point in time. Like there wasn't that interest for Dark Crystal for someone to pay more money than it took to make the original Dark Crystal to like do some other thing. I did find it interesting that like this was the one that of the two movies, like Dark Crystal and Labyrinth, like this was the one that like did better in theaters compared to the other one because I feel like public perception and like what people remember and like it has definitely flip-flopped in that time. Like now the Labyrinth is the one that people like talk about, like, oh man, David Bowie and all this Labyrinth stuff, and Dark Crystal is the one who was like, yeah, Dark Crystal is a thing too. Like, if you guys, someone out there really loves Dark Crystal, like I would love to hear why you like it divorced from like any childhood nostalgia for it because I don't have that and I wasn't into this thing when I saw it as an adult.